Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of SrimadBhagavatam. We are going to commence with Canto 5, the Universal Order. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhete girim yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Deenatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. So today we are going to be reading the foreword and the introduction by the writers of this book, Krishna Dharma and Chintamani Dham Dasi Mataji. The foreword is as follows. As Krishna Dharma's and Chintamani Dham's retelling of the Srimad Bhagavatam continues, we have reached Canto 5. This canto opens with important lessons learned from the lives of great devotees who are placed by the Lord's will into extraordinary circumstances. First, we hear about King Priyavrata. The eldest son of Swambhuva Manu and a powerful ascetic who ruled the earth on the request of his father and Lord Brahma. Through this narrative, we learn that devotional service to Krishna and not detachment from matter is the soul's supreme activity. For Priyavrata left a life of austerity in the Himalayas and became king in order to please Lord Krishna. This tenet that bhakti reigns supreme over all other spiritual practices is the main theme that runs consistently through the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. It surfaces clearly in the teachings of King Rishabdev to his 100 sons and is displayed in the life of his foremost son, King Bharat. No one can be unmoved hearing how Bharat goes from king to renunciant and then onward through two more births, one as a deer and the next as the silent yet fully realized Jad Bharat. I will repeat. It surfaces clearly in the teachings of King Rishabdev. We are talking about Srimad Bhagavatam here, of course. In the teachings of King Rishabdev to his 100 sons and is displayed in the life of his foremost son, King Bharat. No one can be unmoved hearing how Bharat goes from king to renunciant and then onward through two more births, one as a deer and the next as the silent yet fully realized Jad Bharat. When Jad Bharat finally speaks, he does so to the arrogant king Rahugna and turns his mind. He expands on the sublime teachings of his father Rishabdev from 3 lives back. How does he remember? By the Lord's grace that stayed with him despite 2 changes of body. It is here where I would like my readers to pause for a moment and appreciate the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is called the Amala or Spotless Purana. The Bhagavatam never deviates from the main and the only purpose of life to increase our love for Krishna. As Srila Prabhupada said so nicely, our main business is to enhance our Krishna consciousness. This is from a room conversation in Hawaii in 1975. Srila Prabhupada considers anything else to be a dangerous waste of the vital energy of human life. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur expressed a similar mood in the 9th chapter of his Jaiva Dharma and points out the dangers of pursuing knowledge of the material world that excludes Krishna. Advaita Dasa, I repeat, human life is short. Therefore, like the wayfarer, prepare for spiritual realization during destination. If we wastefully spend more and more time pursuing material knowledge, less time is left for spiritual knowledge, realization. After describing King Bharat's 3 lives, the narration shifts to the universe. King Parikshit asked the narrator of the Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami, to describe the 7 islands of Bhumandala, which were created by the powerful King Priyavrata. Parikshit also asked a second and most thought-provoking question: how can we perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the future? He used to pervade the universe. These are his words. When the mind is fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his external feature, made of the material modes of nature, the gross universal form, it is brought to the platform of pure goodness. In that transcendental position, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, who in his subtler form is self-effulgent and beyond the modes of nature. O my Lord, please describe vividly how that form which covers the entire universe is perceived. This is from SrimadBhagavatam, 5th Canto, chapter 16, verse 3. Inspired by these 2 questions, Shukadev Goswami launches into a section of the Bhagavatam that is considered by some of the most difficult or daunting part of the entire scripture. But it does not have to be that way if we understand Shukadev's unique approach. With his pure transcendental vision, that great narrator explains both the structure of the universe as he perceives it and the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by which he supports and is present throughout material existence. Shukadev's answers to these questions continue until the end of that canto. True to his main thrust, Krishna is to be glorified as the focal point of the Bhagavatam. Shukadev weaves in the beautiful narratives and prayers by the various residents in the universe, even as he describes it. With this, he carries his hearers to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who will later appear free from any coverings in the 10th canto. I will repeat. With this, he carries his hearers to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who will later appear free from any coverings in the 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada represents Srila Shukadev Goswami's perspective with a deep point. Our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna as he himself advises, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. This should be our only business. This verse is of course from Bhagavad Gita, but it's quoted again in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 1st chapter, verse 38. Or we can say those 2 verses are parallel. On another occasion, Srila Prabhupada told an older disciple specifically about the 5th canto. The stress is on devotion, not cosmic geography. The great transcendental adventure, Kurma Das, chapter 10. Let us appreciate this devotional perspective which goes right to the spiritual essence and does not waste time with any diversions into various aspects of material knowledge. That is dealt with fully in other parts of Vedic scriptures for those who are determinedly interested. However, the Bhagavatam has another purpose. It shows the Supreme Lord and his will behind all cosmic activities. And let us also appreciate just how the Bhagavatam conveys its message. Jiva Goswami quotes an amazing verse. Vedaha Puranam Kavyam Cha Prabhur Mitram Priyeva Cha Bodhyantiti Hi Prabhus Trivrid Bhagavatam Punaha. The Vedas, Puranas and the poetic works, that is the Kavya, instruct one like a master, friend or beloved, respectively. But Srimad Bhagavatam teaches in all 3 ways. So Srimad Bhagavatam instructs us like the Vedas, Puranas and the poetic works all together combined. So this is quoted in Tattva Sandarbha, Anu 26. Sometimes the Bhagavatam will speak in an authoritative voice. It is like this, do this, etc. At other times, it speaks to us like a friend using stories, reason and deep insights, and yet at other times, it speaks to us in a way that awakes loving devotional feelings. This makes the Bhagavatam so absolutely appealing for the intellect, mind, and heart. Without further ado, I encourage now all the readers to dive deeply into this engaging and evocative volume of the Brilliant as the Sun series and feel bhakti arise in their hearts, and I pray that Krishna Dharma and Chintamani Dham will finish all the 12 cantos. So this foreword was by His Holiness Sachinandan Swami, who is a spiritual master, author and teacher at the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education in India. Now, the introduction. In the 6th volume of Brilliant as the Sun, we present the entire 5th canto of SrimadBhagavatam. It shows us how Krishna's insuperable will perfectly orders the creation, placing us in the appropriate situations corresponding to our desires and deserts. We hear of the mighty king Priyavrata who divided the earth into its various continents, and of King Bharat and how he achieved spiritual perfection over 3 births, one of which was a deer. We also hear the great sage Shukadev Goswami explain the structure of the cosmos, giving detailed descriptions of other planets, both heavenly and hellish. As with previous volumes, we have employed poetic license to dramatize parts of the narrative, hoping to enhance the reader's ability to better understand the flow and intent of the story. Our primary source material was again the work of our teacher, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the commentaries of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a great saint in Prabhupada's preceptorial line. We also had access to the commentaries of other great acharyas, some of whom we reference in our notes. You can read this volume as a standalone, but it would be helpful to begin with Canto 1 and work systematically through the cantos as the Bhagavatam itself recommends. We also recommend that for a deeper understanding of the text, you consult Prabhupada's scholarly translation and commentary. Indeed, our chief aim with our writing is to stimulate interest in his work, as the Bhagavatam needs to be heard from a self-realized soul, and we make no claim to having such a status. Thus, we fall at the feet of our esteemed Master and present this humble effort for his pleasure, hoping for his divine mercy and blessings. Om Tat Sat. So this was the introduction to Canto 5 by the authors, Krishna Dharma and Chintamani Dham. And now we'll make a start with the first chapter. We'll only read a few pages of this chapter because we have spent some time now in reading the foreword at the introduction. So chapter 1 of Canto 5 is King Priyavrata's wondrous activities. The first light of dawn appeared. Shaunak made his way toward the river. The air was filled with the murmured chants of thousands of sages also heading for the river to take their baths. Some were already immersed waist deep in the cool waters, their eyes closed as they intoned the sacred Gayatri mantra. Clad in only loincloth, Shaunak waded out to join them. As he dipped beneath the gentle lapping waves, he thought of the previous day's discourse. Sutta had spoken about the great Swambhuva Manu's descendants, concluding with a brief description of his grandson, Priyavrata, who had attained self-realization. At Manu's request, he later became the emperor of the world. It had surprised Shaunak to hear this. Self-realization was life's aim. Why would one return to material activities, especially as a king surrounded by so much opulence? He was eager to hear the continuation of the story. He recited his mantras and came out of the water, again making his way to the great clearing where the sages were assembling. Taking his place next to Sutta, he waited as the excited assembly settled. When calm prevailed, Sutta spoke, "O Brahmins, listen as I recite the history of Priyavrata and his glorious descendants." Parikshit looked up at the setting sun. He had been hearing continuously from Shukadev for 24 hours. The naked sage sat peacefully before him, looking as fresh and effulgent as when he had appeared before the king the previous afternoon. The king looked around at the vast audience of mystics, yogis and ascetics who had assembled to hear Shukadev instruct him. On learning that the great devotee monarch had been cursed to die in 7 days, they had come from all the parts of the universe to help him attain the supreme destination. Even the celestial sages had joined the 60,000 other attendees to hear the conversation between the king and his youthful spiritual master. They listened in respectful silence as Shukadev narrated the SrimadBhagavatam. Everyone was keen to learn more about Priyavrata. Chapter 1, verse 1, Parikshit said, "Great sage, the mission of human life is to reawaken our eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. Family life undermines the quest for self-realization because it keeps us trapped in the bodily conception and absorbed in the selfish work, which binds us in the network of karmic reactions." Why then did the spiritually advanced Priyavrata become a householder and remain in that position for so long? Verses 2 and 4, a person experiencing the bliss of devotional service to Krishna is free of material desires. Such great souls are satisfied serving Krishna. It is impossible for family relationships to attract them. It is equally not possible for one attached to wife, children and home to achieve the topmost infallible perfection of Krishna consciousness. For these reasons, I am perplexed why King Priyavrata took to family life after achieving self-realization. Verse 5, both of your propositions are true, and Shukadeva, liberated devotees relish the glories of Lord Krishna, who exalted persons like Krishna, Lord Brahma always praise. However, something may temporarily check their advancement. Despite this, they never lose their attraction for Krishna. What could arrest a liberated devotee's advancement? Asked Parikshit. Shukadev said there are two kinds of impediments to a devotional service. The first is an offense at the lotus feet of Vaishnava. Since Krishna consciousness is also eternal, it is never destroyed, but offenses to the devotee may stall one's progress for some time. So they say the two kinds of impediments to the devotional service Shukadev Goswami is telling us. The first is an offense at the lotus feet of Vaishnavas. Since Krishna consciousness is eternal, it is never destroyed, but offenses to a devotee may stall one's progress for some time. The second type of impediment is due to Krishna's desire. This occurs in Priyavrata's case. Listen as I describe what happened. So we will continue from here onward, the chapter 1 from 5th canto. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.